All right. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining the premiere of the Greenlighting app and the upcoming March 2022 release. My name is Jeannie Clark, and I will be your host. Joining me are Brittany Wood, AJ Utman, and Holly Vashis from our customer care team. And we have Eric Dodson, who needs no introductions, and he's going to kick us off today. Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well, and thank you for joining. We have been working on WebCheckout now for over 20 years, believe it or not. And it started with a very focused problem at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, where they just had these checkout areas on campus, and they had a single computer, and they couldn't sustain the load. They needed to have something networked. They needed to be able to share things across departments. They needed to be able to, recognize when a student wasn't enrolled anymore, or wasn't had some problems and they were ineligible for our services. It started with a very focused solution to a problem or set of problems. And gradually over the years, we've seen that the problem space grow, or the solution space grow, so that we were doing deliveries into classrooms or events, different kinds of things, different kinds of equipment, different kinds of problems. And we kept getting these requests like, hey, can you have a professor approve reservations? What we came to realize was that, like, a professor approving a reservation was really a solution to a different problem, and a problem that had several pieces to it. That we were one piece, but we were part of a process. And so over the past really couple of years, we have been formulating this approach that is a solution to a bigger problem. And and there's a two or threefold solution to that problem, and one of which we're gonna show you today. But the bigger problem in some cases is just simply that a student is assigned a project to do for coursework, or they have it to do it to complete their studies, and that they need to go through for example, an approval process prior to being able to make reservations or being eligible for them. So they needed to maybe get approval from the professor, meet with a production manager, get some approvals there. Maybe there's some risk management kinds of input where they needed to prove that they had the insurance, or they needed to get a permit. All these things really kind of preceded those original reservations. And in some cases, then a single reservation didn't represent the entirety of the project work or the assignment. So, we needed this more overarching kind of entity, we would call it in our world, called a project that could inform these reservations and could collect these reservations and collect all of that data that we had needed. I know art school kinds of projects have those characteristics. Film schools very definitely have those kind of projects. Events have those kind of projects as well. And we suspect that there are some other the project requirements, I should have said. We suspect that there are other uses out there too that we are looking forward to being able to accommodate. And so we have this larger picture. And one of the things that I'll describe here is that I think many of you are equipment managers, and that in the absence of a sort of codified, would be another computer word that we use around, of a documented, easily communicated process for these projects, for the state of these projects, for the state transitions. Again, I think I'm using computer words, but like this is a project that's been assigned, and now I have the necessary paperwork, and now I've collected it all, and now I can make my reservations. In the absence of that, a lot is piled on the equipment manager, probably you that I'm talking to. And so that you find yourself having to deal with paperwork that really is a property management or risk management issue, or like having to deal with certain roadblocks that professors want, or other people in the faculty or staff want, and that it's piled all onto the equipment manager. And so it's not really good for anybody, particularly the equipment manager, who has to deal with it all. But even a student goes to a professor and has a question, and the professor has to ask the equipment manager, and like what we're trying to do is to democratize that process a little bit, make it so that people with the responsibilities are empowered to like fulfill their responsibilities, to be accountable, and to execute that. And then again, I hope it distributes the load to the people who can be empowered to fulfill their step in the process. But that's it, and I'll give it back to you, Jeannie, and thank you all.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, so today we will be premiering the new Greenlighting app, and I will also be highlighting the new features of the upcoming March 2022 release. The March 2022 release and the Greenlighting app will be live in the next few days. We're wrapping up testing and polishing work here. So let's begin. As they say, lights, camera, action, right? Okay. All right. So why greenlighting? So let's set the scene. So as Eric mentioned, for many of you, your students are required to submit information like location information, shot lists, safety forms, for example, in order to book equipment for their class project. And typically there's an instructor or a production manager who oversees this process and ensures that students have all the requirements to produce their project. And most importantly, that students are safely and responsibly producing their projects. And this process of collecting all the pre-production information is typically managed outside of WebCheckout. But as students are familiar with Patron portal and they want their equipment, it's pretty natural that they'll go to the equipment cage with the expectation to pick up their equipment for their upcoming project. And when they get there, they'll realize, wait, the equipment cage doesn't have their reservation, and they weren't aware that they even had a project, and they don't have easy access to the pre-production information to even help the student to tell them where the roadblock is, because it's managed in another system. So as equipment managers, your hands are tied and you can't instruct or guide your students. So instead, you have to direct the student to go back to the production office to get the project approval and all the requirements in order to then get their reservation in Patron portal. So here's Penny, the PM. She is the production manager. She oversees the student project, and as a production manager, her role is to be the liaison between students, instructors, the various safety and risk coordinators, and of course you, the equipment managers. Now, as students submit their production requirement, it's currently, it's Penny's responsibility for inputting that information into her internal system and communicating that the requirements have been received or they're still missing to the instructors and the safety coordinators, and of course the equipment managers. And obviously the students, right? They need to know where they stand with their pre-production requirements, if they've been approved or sent back. And Penny has to manage this process. And the coordinating, the communicating, the overall management of the different processes, the different systems is a job on its own. And the pre-production process can become a burden on everyone: equipment managers, students, instructors, and production managers, because it involves so many different processes and systems, when really you all need access to the same information. So cue greenlighting. All right. So greenlighting introduces a new entity or a new thing you can track in WebCheckout called projects. And with projects, it can be used to collect additional information to book equipment. Again, as majority of you are in higher education and supporting course-related film production, projects in that sense can be a class assignment. But if you broaden up the term or what projects can do or what greenlightings can do, project is something that requires planning and usually involves one or many people. So with greenlighting, you can open up circulation to the project, and it really advances our circulation features, right? So for the first version of greenlighting, a project must be assigned to the patron. So if I'm going back to Penny, the production manager, when the student has all of the approved information or all the paperwork, I would create a project, and this shows that they've been approved, they've assigned to the project, and the project has been approved, okay? But as one or more patrons can be on a project, this is opening up a circulation to the project, because now not just the owner of the project, but other individuals who have a role to the project can book equipment, and it's all tracked back to that project. And with this, the usage hours for all of the individuals can accumulate and apply towards the project's policy class. A policy class is a new feature of the upcoming release, which I'll go into today. But how similar to how patrons have a set of usage limits or a patron class, now projects can have a set of usage limits with the policy class. And again, you can pool those usage hours, right? And greenlighting also allows you to track equipment usage for academic purposes. Each checkout center can make optional or require projects to be included in all checkouts and reservations. You can even add a group to the project to track the course assigning the project. And all this activity, of course, the people, the group, the equipment usage, this is all reported on in WebCheckout. And then finally, back to my original question, why greenlighting? Well, WebCheckout is already an integral part of the production process, right? Your students are familiar with Patron Portal, equipment's already managed in here. So we've expanded the reach of WebCheckout with greenlighting to streamline the production process and to unify the team. So let's see what everyone's talking about. Let's go into greenlighting. Okay, so I am logged into the new Greenlighting app, and you can see here on the top right-hand side corner, I'm logged into Penny the PM. There are two new operator capabilities still managed in WebCheckout. You can manage projects and manage project templates to access this Greenlighting app. Without those capability in WebCheckout, you will not see the Greenlighting app without that operator capability. So, all right, so I am in the Greenlighting app, and as a project manager, I can see all the production manager, I can see all the active projects and the project information here. So this is a find screen or a search screen, which you're familiar with in WebCheckout. You can search for projects, and for the first release of Greenlighting, again, the creation of a project is the entryway, or it is the approval that the project has been approved and the student can book equipment. So let's look at a project detail to see what is the information that we're collecting. So here I'm going to click on my project here, Blueberries for Blue. I'll zoom in here so you can see the additional information better. So with projects, we have a project name. This is typically the project that the student's submitting, Blueberries for Blue. And this is WebCheckout, so a unique ID is required. It can be the project name as long as it is unique. A side note, we have plans already in development for a future feature where you can preset the unique ID with an alphanumeric key and a sequence of numbers. So the unique ID will auto-generate when you create a new entity. So this is a great new feature, stay tuned. But with the project details, you also have a project type. So this is classifying what the project is. This is a customizable field. The project type list, it's a setting that you can control within the app, and I'll review today. Again, the project needs the owner. Again, this is the person who's assigned to the project. The owner can book equipment to this project. They'll be able to see it in Patron Portal. We also have a sponsor. A sponsor currently is any active patron in WebCheckout, but the use case is for the instructor who is overseeing the project. They approve the project, right? So I use that key term there, approve. We do understand that you want to automate the process of approving the project, and there's a possibility that sponsor can expand more than one sponsor. So for now, for this first release, a sponsor is informative, the person who is overseeing the project, right? We also have start and end dates. This is when the project is active. You do not need to include a start and end date. We also have the active setting here. Only active projects will be visible and available to be selected in Patron portal. And the only active projects are visible on the main find projects or your project list. We also have a description, just a text field of what the project is. And then a policy class. I mentioned the policy class is a new feature of the upcoming release. And with a policy class, you'll see the list of policy classes which were created in WebCheckout. And each policy class has a set of usage limits or policies designated to it. So based on the project, I can explicitly set usage limits. So how this could be useful, if a class project gives students more or maybe even less time to use equipment than a non-class project, you can control that now with policy class. But again, what is unique to Greenlighting is that as we're opening up circulation to the project and many patrons can book to the project, you can now have all those patrons who are designated to book to the project, their usage and their activity can pool and accumulate towards the policy limits or the usage limits set at the project. So this feature of pooling usage hours against the limits is a feature of Greenlighting. Great new feature. Projects can also have a section, right, to indicate which group or which course is assigning the project. And then there's some pre-filled information based on your policy class or section selectors that will fill that information down here. Additionally, with projects, you can add roles. So the big thing, opening up circulation to the project with roles, these are people who have a specific function to the project. Someone who can circulate will see the project in Patron portal. And again, they can select it when they reserve their reservation. Those who cannot circulate, they will not see the project in Patron portal. However, we have this future feature of this can edit, where we've reserved this feature for students who have a role, but they don't need to book equipment. So for an example, I have actors here, Rick and Carl. They are actors. They don't need to book equipment, but they may need to upload a waiver to this project that they are agreeing to be an actor. And so they can edit, which they'll be able to upload and attach their waivers, but again, they won't be able to book equipment. This is a feature of Greenlighting that we have planned out here. But that is what the can edit and can circulate and what roles really adds to the project. So Gus, Hank, Skylar, and Ron, all these folks here, they can circulate and book to this project, Blueberries for Blue. And you can see here the allocation information. So as the project manager, I now can see, wow, there have been checkouts and reservations to this project. And this is information that it was not given to me or not easily available for me previously to this integrating my process into WebCheckout. All right. So in the Greenlighting app and from any screen, you have the option to take action. So from my project detail, I have the option to add a role. I already have several roles, but let's add a new one. So this is a add role modal. I'm going to add a new role for a third crew person. All right, and we do need a unique ID. And so this would be really great when we do have that new feature where the unique ID will just auto-generate, but for the purpose of time, I'm going to have it be the same as the role name. And this person can edit and they can circulate, and I'm going to assign this to Tina. and I can click submit. Or another new feature of the upcoming release is the submit and create another. You'll see this all throughout WebCheckout. So as you're creating all those resource records, you can just click submit and create another, and bam, another screen to create your new role. All right. In addition to creating a new role, with any screen you're in the Greenlighting app, you'll have the option to create a new project. So if a new project comes in, I can click Break Project. Project name, unique ID, and owner. Those are the only 3 required fields. Okay. Again, submit or submit and create another is another option here. And you also have the option to create a project template. Okay. I'm going to navigate over here to the left to my templates icon to show you my active templates. Okay. Now, templates are a quick way to create projects that have same properties and are especially useful when you have projects that have many roles. And you know, the roles are pretty similar on a project. So with a template, the use case here, if it's that time of year where you have students that you know they're going to have a similar project, you can create that template, come to fill out the information. This project is always going to be an advanced project. It's always going to be sponsored by Hermione. We do have a policy class, and it comes with these 6-7 sets of roles. This is an advanced project template. And so from here, I can simply click create a project from template. And so most of that project template has been filled. I do still have to give it a name, a unique ID, and owner because I am creating a new project. So I'm going to call this a rhythm of my heart, and I do have a unique ID here. And the owner is Sally. So Sally's been approved for this project. She has all the information. I'm going to click submit. So this project has been created and all the roles have been predefined. So I don't have to go in and add 7 roles all at once. So this is a nice quick way to create several projects at one time or easily lined up with predefined templates or a template that you can define. All this can also be imported if you do want to move project information from one system to another. And then finally, in the Greenlighting app, we do have the settings where you can customize your project type. Again, in a project or project template, you have the option to select a drop down of what type of project this is. You can add as many as you'd like. Just requires a unique ID and a description. Right. And so with all this, you set up the project, you manage the project type. Let's now see what the patron sees in Patron Portal, right? So with the student's view and with kind of the preparation or power of preparation, I'm going to log I'm in Patron Portal, and I've already started my reservation. I've added my items. I started my time. And in my review, my reservation, I've made it that the projects are required at my checkout center. So I have this error, project is required, and I'm unable to submit my reservation. So until I select my project. So I see my drop-down list of projects here. I've been working on blueberries for blue, so I can simply click on that. And let's make sure I'm not violating any issues. Great, I could submit my reservation, and this will, actually, let's just do it. I'll submit my reservation. Everything has been set. Reservation has been confirmed. Great. I can go into my accounts, and I can see that reservation that I just created. It's pending approval. I can see my current checkouts. I can see the project that I've added, and then I can see all my other projects that are assigned to me. Right. Some of these projects, for example, Potions Podcast, I am not the owner, but I can circulate to it. So I see it as a list of my projects. But if I go back into Greenlighting and I go into projects, I can see here Potions Podcast. It's assigned to Harry. But again, I'm a host of the podcast. So I have that in my Patron Portal as well. Right. And with my policy classes, when I'm creating a new reservation, or when I'm creating a reservation, if I'm violating any, I need to make sure my policy classes will calculate, right? It will validate out any policy. So again, blueberries for blue, I did not, I have very generous usage limits. So I'm not violating any policies. But if I go to Potions podcast, I can see in my web checkout, I don't have a reservation for potions. I don't have a checkout, but I'm violating this policy that there's already one allocation and it's reached its limit. And again, it's because of the policy class and the pooling of usage with greenlighting and projects. I have a limit that I can only have one checkout. Harry already has one checkout. I only want podcast projects to have one checkout. You can renew, you can add to that existing, but you can't create multiples. And this is limiting that usage for projects. All right. So, and of course, we can see that this is all tracked in WebCheckout. So the information was fairly seamlessly integrated for Patron Portal and in WebCheckout. Click back here. I've updated my dashboards here so that I've included the project information. All of my reports, so of course, all of your allocation reports will include the project information if you want to include it in search terms or result columns, as well as your resource report. So if you've been on these webinars, you know that we push the fine resource schedules. If you are generating usage for individual items, you can include the project so you can report academic usage of your equipment, right? So with Greenlighting, you can track the project from start to finish. We're really excited about this new app and this first release and what it can do for WebCheckout, for the application, and also what it can do for your operations. After I review the other great new features of the March 2022 release, I'll provide details on how you can opt in for a free trial of the Greenlighting app when you upgrade. All right, so let's continue with the new features of the March 2022 release. Okay, so I'm gonna go into WebCheckout here. So this release includes several improvements to the user interface, and actually just several improvements to the user experience. Starting with replacing dated wizards with modals. I may not be using the wizards properly, it might not be the technical term, but you'll first notice this change when you actually create a new reservation. So in a new reservation, there's several changes, but we've moved the patron and the start and end time, so the primary information for the allocation, to the left panel. And you can edit that by clicking the pencil icon, and you can enter the patron information. So I can, just doing this for student, I forgot her name, Sally the student, and I can list her projects here, and our start and end times are here. So it's a nice way to include all the information in one screen or one place that everyone touches: the patron, maybe the project or the group, and the start and end time. So then when you go into the allocation detail, the contents tab is the first screen you'll see. And we know this is one of the most important information. So when you go into the allocation detail, this has changed. Your patron information, your start and end time has moved to the left. Your contents is now the first tab. Other information stayed the same. Scheduling tab is no longer there, since you can now set your start and end times on the left. And instead, we have a repeats tab where you will just manage your repeats, right? Billing has stayed the same. People has stayed the same. So it's all the patron information, contact person, and accompanying patrons. Policies, this has stayed the same. We just provided additional information. So if there's a project or a group policy class. And then we have activity and attachments. Those have stayed the same. So going back to that improvement that about the replacing the wizards with the create new modal. You'll notice this again in not only the new reservation or new checkout, but again, if you're creating new resources. So instead of clicking through, do you want to create a new, what are you creating? Is it circulating, clicking before you get to all the information? You now just click, I want to click a new resource, and all the fields pop up. You can enter in all those fields, and then you have the submit and create another. So hopefully this is a nice shortcut for all of you equipment managers. All right. Our next exciting improvement is managing patron classes in the user interface. So again, patron class is used to designate a set of usage limits to an individual. And now you can rename the patron class yourself. So you'll go to the admin menu, global settings, and go to the policy classes tab. So I do understand it is a patron class, but the tab is called policy classes. Take a side note, we did consider changing the field in the patron record, which is actually called patron class, to policy class. So it's uniform, but we realized that would take additional work on your systems teams to update that field if you have integration. So we are not changing that in the integration file. So it is called policy class in the user interface. But again, this is for managing your patron classes. It is global. Every patron has a patron class. You may not have recognized it. The default is other, which you can rename. And this setting here, the policy classes, it will affect every department, every patron record. So before you make any changes here, be sure you discuss with your teams, but you can now rename your patron classes. You can also add many, you can nest more or add many more levels of patron classes as you need. And as you can see, as you go into a patron class, it does provide information on how many patrons are designated to that patron class. Okay. And so I can simply create a new patron class here by clicking the plus sign. This is a vendor. Just call this a vendor. And a vendor, for example, they may be able to reserve equipment through patron portal, but they have a very strict set of usage limits, or different set of usage limits. So I'm creating a policy class for all my vendor customers that I support. Okay. So this is a global policy class for patrons. We then have policy classes at the organization level. This is a new feature here. And similar to patron class, we have policy class for groups and for projects. So I have these 4 policy classes here. I've created them. When you all upgrade to the new release and you come to the policy classes of your organization screen, there will be no policy classes here, right? This is a new feature. So you'll click start and you'll create a new policy class. So if you want a set of policies to apply to your group, right? So members of that group, they will get this set of policies when they select that group on their reservation. You would create your policy class here. So I am going to create an intro projects usage limit, and it needs a unique ID. We're just going to copy that and submit. So these are my, I can set a set of policies for just my intro projects, and I can apply them to a group. So once you have all of your policy classes, patron classes created, you'll then see these listed anywhere you can set a policy or patron class. So for example, in the allocations tab of your organization or checkout center, your resource types and your patron portal tab, you have policies applying to, and you have your list of, first, you'll see your global or your patrons policy classes. And then you'll see your organizations or policy classes that can apply to a group or a project. Okay. So you can then select that policy class, your screen will refresh, select your setting, click Save Changes. Just like how you're currently managing policy classes, patron classes for individuals, we now expanded it to groups and projects, and you can customize your own policy classes for that usage. All right. Okay. All right. So now that we've reviewed policies and we've set up the policy classes, the Checkout Center now has the setting for groups or projects to be optional or required on reservation. So all this setting up the policy classes and assigning them to policies, for them to be enforced, the student needs to select, or the patron needs to select that group in Patron Portal, or when you're creating that checkout in WebCheckout. So I'm going to go to Admin Checkout Center. I will go to the Allocations tab, and there is a new setting here called Group Requirement and Project Requirement. So we reviewed the project requirement with the Greenlighting module or Greenlighting app. So I'm just going to disable this. And so let's say you just have web checkout, you upgraded, you don't have the need for Greenlighting, but you do want to track your patrons' groups. So we can make this optional or required yes. So the difference there, if it's required, you cannot submit your reservation or your checkout without a group selector. So you have to ensure all of your patrons are assigned to a group, or all those who can book equipment are assigned to a group, or you can make it optional. So it's not required, but I will make it required, and we'll save this. We'll save this. And so let's go back to the new reservation screen. I'll familiarize you all with the new, let me cancel this first. Familiarize you all with the new allocation detail here. So I've updated this to now require a group. Of course, we need a student, a patron. And now instead of a list of her projects, I see a list of her groups. And just to verify this is all connected in Patron Portal, I'll refresh my screen here. And I can see now in my review, my reservation, no longer do I see the project. Instead, I see group, and I see my list of groups. And since I'm requiring a group, it still seems like it's stuck here, but my group requirement should satisfy that. Okay, so that's a great new feature of the upcoming release. I know we've heard from several customers who've wanted the ability to create policies for groups and also to track groups on reservations. And just like the project, all the group information is reportable. So in the Find Upcoming, all the report screens, I've included a project, but instead, or in addition to, you can include the group. We have a long list of group. You can always search for group as well. All that has been integrated into WebCheckout. Okay, all right. And with the Checkout Center settings, we have included a new feature as well under Patron Portal. And this is a new feature that you can show or not show unauthorized and uncertified resource types in Patron Portal. So when you upgrade, the settings will preserve the current behavior, which is we do not show unauthorized resource types in Patron Portal. So you're not authorized, you don't see it. And for certifications, you actually can see resource types that you're not certified for. But if now you can manage these settings, I'm going to show you how this works. And so what an unauthorized resource type would look like in Patron Portal. So I will show, so I'm going to unclick hide. So I want to show my patrons unauthorized types. Let me close this and log out. and log back in. Never share your username and password with others. And here, a very cute dog. This resource type I am not authorized for. You see it now, but it pops up. And I can see the information, whatever information I had in WebCheckout. I have very limited information on this, just an image and a name. But you can see here, authorization is required to add items of this type. So I don't even have the option to add this item. I get that message. But now, now your patrons can see all of the equipment you have at your checkout center. All right. Okay, and a few honorable mentions of the upcoming release. You can import calendar feed URLs, so personal calendar feeds URL. So for institutions who would like students to view their reservations and checkouts in a calendar event, you can now set this calendar URL. You can predefine it. So provide it to your students ahead of time. So at orientation, for example, here's your calendar feed. So integrate it, add it to your Google Calendar so you can see your checkouts and reservations. I should also mention that projects can be imported as well. I think I already didn't mention that, but you can import those. And we've made several improvements to patron portal accessibility and, of course, continued improvements to application support and system updates. And with that, that does end my demonstration of the March 2022 release and the Greenlighting App premiere. We will be following up on Monday with a survey with just 3 to 4 questions that will include your interest in the Greenlighting App. As it's a new module, but as we say, we're trying to include the pre-production process. We want your teams to start using the system, and we want to get their buy-in. We want them to get excited for it. So with this free trial, with this survey, we want to reach out to those that are interested, and we'll have a series of webinars just for greenlighting and setting it up. And please start a community of folks who have this need for managing additional information, in WebCheckout, and really evolve what Greenlighting and WebCheckout can do for not only your department, but for the entire institution. So that will be coming out. That survey will be coming out with this recording on Monday. And our release announcement will be coming out in the next few days here. So next week. So keep an eye out for all that fun, exciting activity. Okay. Enough about me, enough on me. Let's turn it over to you all. Any questions, comments? And all right. And feel free, Brittany, do we have any questions? You wanted to.
We had one question asked and answered in the chat. So just a question from Gregory asking if it was possible to add a checkout to a project after it was signed out. And it looks like Lee replied, just noting that once the project is picked up, the project or the group cannot be changed. And it looks like an error is produced.
Yes, yep, you cannot change the project once it's signed out, correct. And then Greg, can you apply the mandate for choosing a project on a reservation based on the patrons group? No, it's a checkout center setting currently to require a project or a group. So unfortunately, you can't say only students have to select a project. It's all or nothing since it's a checkout center. A setting.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, Jeannie.
Hi.
This is Ada from OCAD University.
Hi,
So
Sita.
I made it to the call about halfway through. And I think I missed the beginning part where you probably explained the Greenlight app and possibly the project. Can you just give me a quick description of what is the purpose of the project function, and just so I
Yeah,
can have a better understanding?
right. So the project is it's a new thing that you can track on a checkout or a reservation, and it's collecting additional information in order to check out equipment. So in academia and for higher ed, if your students are producing a film project and they need to submit all the information like risk forms, and they need to have their script, a crew, all that assembled before they can book equipment. You can use projects to say, yep, they've got all that, they've been approved. So a project has been created, it's assigned to them, and now they can select the project and it book equipment for that project.
Okay, great. That's good to know. And then one more question regarding the last example you showed with like authorizations, and I'm loving the new changes that are coming up, by the way, especially with adding resources, because I do have to add resources manually sometimes here and there, and it's a lot
Sure.
of back and forth with the thing. And in terms of like setting up authorizations as well, I like how it shows on Patron portal whether, so you can check off the setting where unauthorized and authorized resource
right.
types be visible. So this way, I guess, now we can make all resource types visible on Patron portal and
Yep.
just check off. So that's really helpful. But in my case scenario, what we're trying to do is, you see, like we have all our groups set up within one organization, but we have multiple organizations. And we have like different organizations that would like to use course enrollment module, but then our groups are all set up within a different organization. So I was wondering that if I could, I don't know how to properly put this in context, but you know what? I'm going to let some others go with their question, and then I'm going to come back with mine either in the chat or just ask it here.
Yeah, Saida, we can also offline this there with multiple organizations and having groups that span multiple organizations. I can have AJ follow up with you and we can discuss that.
Sure. Yeah, okay. I was going to reach out to AJ anyway, but I guess that'll be better. I'll do that offline. And thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for your feedback.
No problem.
All right. And I see there's some chatter here in the chat. Is it possible to auto-assign patrons to a patron class by the class they are enrolled in based on a patron feed information? So auto-assign a patron to a patron class by the class they're enrolled in. So John, with the data integration, so we have the patron data integration and then the group integration. I believe University of Alabama has both of those, where you can daily feed and update the patron class. I'm not sure I understand that question. If you want to chime in, John. Okay, we'll come back to that. Chris from CSUMB had a great comment. We use capstone project numbers associated to every project. That project number is used through not just the pre-production and production, but also with post-production and archiving. That's great. And the capstone project number could be your unique ID. That's searchable, or the project name that is searchable all within WebCheckout as well. Migdio, once the project is approved, does the project itself limit or approve a specific set of types and bundles? No, the project right now does not provide authorizations to resource types. Resource types is authorization still managed by the group, so that hasn't changed. However, this is a feature that we would like to flesh out with those that do purchase Greenlighting, of how roles or how projects work with authorizations to equipment. especially with roles, having roles. There's several use cases, but we need to understand all those user stories before we expand that. But that is something, MIGDEO, that we have discussed. And in terms of tracking insurance and permits, is this more an upcoming workflow? Yes, Rafael, that would be part of not only just the tracking, but even just the uploading of the insurance form. So right now, projects, or greenlighting, it's very dependent on the production manager or an operator to create the project and input the project information. And again, we want to control this for the release, for the first release, because there's a lot of variations to allowing, patrons opening up the project or creating projects. But we do have visions of, in Patron portal, they'll select their project and you can track your insurance, the forms, as part of the workflow of the project. It was a long-winded answer, but yes, it is part of upcoming workflow. And when will the March release become available? We have an internal date to release it next week. So our goal is to announce it as soon as it's blessed internally. We'll announce it to you all. I think the latest would be not next Monday, but the following Monday, the 18th of April. And since I said that date, you're going to quote me on that, but that's the latest date that we're shooting to release it. All the development, so all the new features, all of that have been done. We stopped adding new features at the end of March. Reason for the name, March 2022 release. And so now again, just finishing the last minute polishing work so it can be available to you all. Right. Thank you everyone for your time. I know we're at time here. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we wrap up? All right. Thank you all for your participation. Please keep an eye out for our email, and we really do look forward to hearing you all using Greenlighting, and we'll see you all next time.